Hey guys, Aaron Cybertron Zhang here, and today I'm bringing you an analysis of the first round matchup that took place at UK Nationals last weekend. Pokemon officially streamed this event, and they're doing a lot more work for more streaming, so there'll actually be 2 more streams this weekend. If you're interested in watching those, check out PokemonChampionships.com. They'll be in the description below. Both Madison Regionals and Italy Nationals will be streamed this weekend, so that's the first time we've had 2 VGC streams officially done by Pokemon on one weekend, so we should get a lot of awesome action, and I'm planning on doing some coverage on those as well. But for UK Nationals, there were a lot of amazing games, and this is something I want to do more of, so if you like seeing this, you like seeing me analyze other players' games, definitely let me know by leaving a like on the video and giving me any feedback possible. Would really appreciate that. Anyway, this first round matchup was between 2013 World Champion Arash Ommati against Nigel Glover. Arash had a Yveltal team with Yveltal, Groudon, Thundurus, Jumpluff, Salamis, and Kangaskhan. He won regionals earlier this year with a similar variant to the team. Meanwhile, Nigel had the dual primal team of Kyogre, Groudon, Thundurus, Salamence, Weavile, and Bronzong. So normally the Yveltal matchup has the upper hand, but the Weavile here on Nigel's side makes it a lot harder for Arash, and as a result, you'd expect Arash to bring Kangaskhan to counter that Weavile. Just because, you know, low kick or power up punch can immediately knock it out. Pokemon actually missed the first turn on their official stream, unfortunately, so we don't know exactly what happened, but given that Kangaskhan is Mega Evolved, presumably we saw a Fake Out or an Icicle Crash into Thundurus and a Thunder Wave into Kangaskhan. I would guess that Kangaskhan was fully paralyzed and did not get the low kick off against Weavile. That would be my best bet. Not exactly sure what happened, but given that we didn't see any damage on the field, that's how I could see it playing out. However, that ends up being a really good position for Nigel here. Paralyzing Kangaskhan's a big deal because it means that your Groudon in the back or your Kyogre in the back will outspeed it. Arash here goes for the Thunder Wave onto the Weavile, but we do see the Icicle Crash coming out. But the reason why we see Thunder Wave onto Weavile was probably because he was predicting a switch into Salamence. Nigel gets the Icicle Crash off, and it brings Thundurus down to its Focus Sash. Good for Nigel to confirm that, though, given that, you know, it's probably going to be a faster kind of Thundurus. Here we see the return for Kangaskhan after a Thunderbolt into that slot, and return does so little damage because poor Kangaskhan is not very happy. It's angry Kangaskhan, and unfortunately that's not good when you're using return. So Thundurus doesn't even get procced to its Citrus Berry should it be carrying it, and it's obviously not even like a 4-hit KO if it has Citrus Berry. So that's really bad news for Arash. He was expecting the Salamence switch in probably, and a return to do around 50% to Thundurus, you know, or 75% depending on, you know, whether it has a Citrus Berry or not. And that's as terrible as a turn as Arash could have asked for. He kind of overextended on a prediction, and Weavile hangs around for a little bit longer. And since Weavile is, you know, the biggest threat in this matchup, then it's kind of a big deal. Here, he goes for the Protect with Thundurus, but of course, Protect can be broken by Feint, and Weavile actually does reveal the Feint, so Arash obviously shaking his head, not very happy about that. Losing Thundurus is also a big deal because it's a great answer against both Salamence and Kyogre if Nigel has that in the back. Here, Thundurus goes into the Kangaskhan once again with the Thunderbolt, and at this point, it's going to be a 3-hit KO, and he gets fully paralyzed there, so the last 2 turns have been absolutely terrible for Arash. You know, failed prediction on the previous turn, and this turn, full paralysis sets him back. Presumably he would have been able to pick up a knockout there on Weavile with a low kick this time around, but that's not the case because of the full paralysis. And now Kangaskhan's just dead weight because both Thundurus and Weavile outspeed. So here, if you're Nigel, you have a bunch of plays. You know, you can go for the safe play of Thunderbolting Kangaskhan and Icicling Crashing Yveltal, which I actually like a lot. Or you can Thunder Wave Yveltal knowing that, you know, Kangaskhan can only return your Thundurus for damage. So if Yveltal protects, then Kangaskhan still can't really touch your Thundurus. So a bunch of plays here. I actually like the idea of Thunderbolting Kangaskhan and Icicle Crashing Yveltal. Since Kangaskhan's your biggest threat against Weavile, if you can knock out the Kangaskhan, then Weavile here can actually Icicle Crash. But instead, Nigel opts to go for the Thunder Wave onto Yveltal. Yveltal here does go for the foul play. So the paralysis on the Yveltal means that anything in the back will be able to outspeed it, which is good. But you'd imagine that Nigel actually could have maybe just won the game here outright if he went for the Thunderbolt onto Kangaskhan. Because 1, you don't have to deal with the risk of missing or full paralysis with Weavile. And then 2, you know, you're guaranteed to knock out on the Kangaskhan, and you could potentially knock out the Yveltal as well. So I think that might have been a little bit better for Nigel's end, but it still works out here. Picks up the knockout onto the Kang and gets Yveltal paralyzed. So 4-2 in Nigel's favor, but game's definitely not over yet. That last turn ended up being an okay turn. I mean, it was an even trade-off there. Kangaskhan maybe could have went for the Sucker Punch onto Weavile, but I don't mind that play on either player's end. I think Arash was probably like, okay, if he gets fully paralyzed, then I can actually just low kick and pick up a knockout. Or if he overextends and targets down the Yveltal and he misses or gets fully paralyzed, that also could work. So Nigel making one of the safer plays, although once again I think Thunderbolting Kang and Icicle crashing the Yveltal would have been a little bit better. But one reason why he might not have wanted to do that was in case we saw Kang switch out into Groudon. And Yveltal protect. So Groudon does come in for Arash now, and this is the time to pull a comeback. The Thundurus is still sitting pretty healthy, relatively, because of the return's reduced damage output. So Thundurus would have been gone if return had max happiness like it should have had. But at this point, you still gotta be a little bit concerned if you're Arash, because a Icicle Crash will knock out Yveltal or do a lot of damage. So your priority is to knock out the Weavile. You could go Sucker Punch Eruption here if you carry Eruption. No switch outs here from Nigel, which is an interesting decision. Not willing to risk any damage by switching in. Yveltal gets fully paralyzed, which is even worse. You see Arash shaking his head there, because it means that Weavile here will get the attack off with its presumed Focus Sash. Of course, most Weaviles, if they're not carrying Focus Sash, will have Life Orb. This one reveals it doesn't have Life Orb, so it's going to be Focus Sash. Thunderous feints there, and Weavile here gets the Icicle Crash off, but Yveltal actually avoids it. So that's good news for Arash. Puts him back into this game a little bit. And that last turn was finally one of the turns Arash needed. He did lose out very much on it. A Taunt on Groudon doesn't really mean a big deal, especially if Arash's Groudon is max speed. We don't know about that, but things are looking pretty solid right now. On both ends, I think if you're Arash, you're actually kind of content with how that last turn played out. Had Weavile been knocked out, then Nigel gets the double free switch in, but because Weavile gets fully paralyzed and misses the Icicle Crash, that's probably the best case scenario, because now you can just double up on whatever's coming in. So let's say Kyogre comes in, then you can maybe Sucker Punch Precipice Blades it. If Salamence comes in, then you could go for Foul Play and Eruption. So we actually do see the Salamence come in. And at this point, I'm not sure I agree with how Nigel's been playing it. Maybe he knows that, there's very little that can happen for me to lose this game, but I think I would have appreciated seeing a Kyogre switch in, especially after you get the Taunt onto Groudon. Because here what can happen is, since Weavile's dead weight, we could actually just see an Eruption and a Foul Play go into the Salamence. Of course, Weavile could choose to switch into Kyogre at any point to get the rain up, and means that Groudon can't use any Fire-type attacks anymore, and I think I kind of would have liked to see that, but of course Nigel must be scared. He knows that Kyogre is his best answer to winning this game, and he knows that if he loses it to a good prediction on Arash's end, then that would be really bad. So it's kind of hard to say in retrospect. Here, I think Nigel's best play is to just feint with the Weavile and protect with Salamence, so you get the free switch into Kyogre. You know that Groudon is using Eruption right now. It probably has Precipice Blades and a fourth attack, which we don't know of right now. However, Arash did run Thunder Punch on his Groudon when he won Regional, so that's one reason why Nigel might not have switched into Kyogre at any point, just sacking and waiting for the free switch in here. So he does choose the Mega Evolve with Mence, and he actually doesn't protect with the Weavile or switch out or go for a feint, which I was kind of surprised to see. Instead, we just see an Eruption come out here as Hyper Voice does under 50% to both Pokemon. And this is actually really scary, because if you pick up the knockout onto the Salamence, if your Groudon's faster, then Arash can actually win this one. You just Sucker Punch and Precipice Blades. Hope Water Spell doesn't knock you out and get another Sucker Punch off. But Foul Play barely misses the knockout onto Salamence, leaves it with 4 HP, and that's basically going to seal the game up for Nigel there. I think if Salamence actually fainted there, Arash had a good chance of winning this one. He would have had to attack through Paralysis, and his Yveltal would have needed to survive a Water Spout. Groudon also would have needed to connect with Precipice Blades. But if it also comes down to, I guess, whether Kyogre has Origin Pulse or not. So if Kyogre doesn't have Origin Pulse and it's relying on Water Spout, then Sucker Punch plus Precipice Blades puts it in, I would say maybe 25-30%, enough that another Sucker Punch from Yveltal will actually knock it out. So it actually would have been really close, but instead Nigel gets a little bit fortunate, let his Salamence hangs on with 4 HP, and you see Arash basically lose this one, since now Kyogre comes in for free. He would basically need a double critical hit with Sucker Punch and Precipice Blades to win this one. So that was really, really well played, I would say, by Arash in the late game. And Nigel, honestly, I think maybe played a little bit too safe and gave Arash the chance to come back, but unfortunately missing the knockout onto Salamence completely seals up the deal. Another full paralysis there on Yveltal. We actually do see that Groudon is faster than Kyogre. That's really, really good information for both players to know going into the consequent matches. You see there, Kyogre actually takes that so well. It only does 51 damage with the single target, or the double target, excuse me. And Water Spell comes out and picks up the double knockout there. So Nigel ends up winning the first game 2-0, but honestly, from my perspective, it was a lot closer than one would have expected, because there were 2 turns in a row where Arash got absolutely nothing off other than the paralysis, and Nigel was just kind of dominating. But then in the end, that one turn where Weavile just basically not Icicling crashing Yveltal at any point, which was, I think, kind of maybe a misplay and a surprise, because I think, you know, Yveltal is kind of the biggest threat. If you can knock out Yveltal, then your Kyogre obviously just easily handles Groudon. Yveltal just makes things a little bit dicier. So both players, you know, played well, made some predictions that didn't work out in their favor, and Arash, you know, most notably knows now that Kangaskhan doesn't have max happiness, and, you know, that one turn could have been the difference, right? If you know now that your return won't be doing as much damage, you can choose either to bring Salamence at your Mega Evolution, or continue to bring Kangaskhan. And I think if I'm Arash, I'm going to bring Kangaskhan again, because I know that Weavile was one of the biggest issues last game. Once again, I don't know what happened that first turn. I suspect it might have been a big deal, though, if it were a full paralysis onto Kangaskhan, because Loka could have actually just knocked out Weavile if that were the case. Actually should have asked Arash and Nigel about that, but maybe they can clarify afterwards. So, going into game 2, I don't think both players really need adjustments Pokemon-wise. I feel like both players have the 4 Pokemon they need to win this matchup. Nigel bringing Groudon and Bronzong doesn't really help at all. Bronzong's absolutely useless against Yveltal and Groudon. Groudon could be interesting, but, you know, Arash's Groudon has revealed it's faster than Kyogre. Nigel might know how fast his Kyogre is relative to his own Groudon, and he doesn't want to bring a Groudon that's slower than Arash's Groudon, especially when his main means of speed control are Thunder Wave, which, you know, you can't Thunder Wave Thundurus or Groudon, and Bronzong, which you don't want to bring. So I suspect both players will end up bringing the same 4 Pokemon. You know, Arash doesn't really want to bring Jumpluff, since the ring can just immediately shut its ability down, and, you know, Jumpluff doesn't get too much offense going. So I suspect we'd see the same 4 Pokemon here. Arash this time going with Thundurus and Kangaskhan, pretty similar to what we saw the last game, and Nigel goes with Weavile and Thundurus. I believe this is the exact same matchup that ended up happening from the last game. This time, though, we do see the first turn play out. So, bunch of options here immediately. If Kangaskhan is inner focus, then it can actually not Mega Evolve and go straight for a low kick onto Weavile, which would be interesting. Otherwise, it can choose to Mega Evolve and go for a Fake Out or a low kick onto Weavile. I think all of those are viable plays. I think if I'm Arash at this point, I want to prioritize knocking out Weavile. You could go for something like a Protect with Thundurus and a low kick onto Weavile, although that's a little bit risky if Weavile goes for the Fake Out onto Kangaskhan. So, a little bit hard to make the prediction on what move Arash wants to make here, because we don't know his Kangaskhan's ability. Of course, he also could be scared of the Thunder Wave from Thundurus, since, you know, that was kind of the crux of the last match, just paralysis spreading left and right. So, even though Kangaskhan threatens Weavile immensely here, the Fake Out pressure means that this first turn, Nigel's free to really stay and do what he wants. Kangaskhan opts to Mega Evolve, indicating that it's not going to be going for a inner focus kind of low kick play. So we could see a Fake Out from Weavile onto the Kangaskhan slot. Weavile here does go for the Fake Out and actually does target the Kangaskhan, so if it were inner focus and it went for a low kick, that would have been huge. Rash here goes for the Thunderbolt onto Thundurus. Those are around 50%, so you can see that Thundurus is obviously really offensive, as the Thundurus in retaliation, actually, that Thunderbolt against Arash's Thundurus did less than expected, so, yeah, I'm surprised that Thundurus hung on with over 50% there, so I'm kind of curious on what kind of spread Arash had there. But I really, would have liked to see the inner focus play there if Kangaskhan did have inner focus. Now it's kind of an interesting position, right? Because if your Thundurus protects, then you can feint Thunderbolt, double target Thundurus. Since Kangaskhan is a max happiness, you can't return the Thundurus for a knockout, once again, which really sucks for Arash. I think if you're Arash here, you might be tempted to just low kick Weavile. And maybe you're willing to lose Thundurus here. You know, if you protect Thundurus and he goes for the feint and Thunderbolt, then you get the trade-off, but you knock out the Weavile, which would be really good on your end, because then Yveltal in the back, you know, isn't going to be as threatened. So here we actually just see a Thunder Wave coming out once again from Thundurus. Best play possible, knowing that Arash doesn't have much to stop that, putting the odds in your favor. We see an Icicle Crash coming out here. So no switch outs either. Nigel's just been going all in with this Weavile, and we did not see the Protect play from Thundurus, so that Icicle Crash does knock out the Thundurus. So Arash may be fearing the faint Thunderbolt play, just tries to attack with Thundurus, doesn't work out. Kangaskhan here, however, does get the low kick. So you imagine actually would have been pretty solid there if Thundurus went for the Protect and Kangaskhan went for the low kick, but instead Thundurus once again goes down to Weavile, and once again, that's not very good for Arash. Arash knew in the last game that there was Salamence and Kyogre in the back, and he loses it once again, but it's also really hard for him to make that read, right? He was probably expecting maybe a target onto Kangaskhan, maybe a switch out, and so he was just willing to stay in with Thundurus, but losing Thundurus so early on both games just hurts a lot, because it's one of the best ways to deal with both Kyogre and Salamence, especially if you've Hidden Power Ice, which you might actually. So I think at this point, if you're Nigel, you're pretty content. You take the trade-off, you eliminate Thundurus, which is the biggest threat to your team, and you get the free switch into Salamence. So things are looking pretty nicely right now for Nigel. He gets the Intimidate against both these physical type users, actually, as the stream lags a little bit here, so I do have to apologize for that. So Intimidate here is obviously excellent against Kangaskhan. Kangaskhan's absolutely useless right now. You know, other than Sucker Punch, it can't return because it will do absolutely no damage, but you don't want to switch out either, and this is kind of the downfall, because you wanted to bring Kangaskhan against the Weavile, but now without Max Happiness, you really can't get much going. There's no power-up punch to, say, increase the attack either, so once again, do have to apologize for the stream lag. I think it clears up pretty quickly if I remember correctly, but just a little bit annoying to deal with currently. And that was directly from Pokemon's Twitch, so not much I could have done about that one. So here, I think if you're Arash, you could switch out Kangaskhan, or you can maybe go for a Sucker Punch play, but I think as long as Nigel just plays safely, he should be able to get this one. However, that last one, you know, Arash was able to almost pull a comeback. So we do see the Mega Evolution on Salamence, and Arash does not switch out his Kangaskhan, which is also a good play because he doesn't want the Groudon to get any damage off. And so we do see, yeah, another Thunder Wave onto Yveltal, so Thundurus has just been spreading paralysis left and right in this matchup. Here, I think we do see full paralysis on the Kangaskhan Zen, probably going for a Sucker Punch, probably onto the Salamence. I'd imagine we'd see a Sucker Punch and a Foul Play, as we do see the Foul Play going onto Thundurus here, so as the stream is still lagging here. So Thundurus gets knocked out there, and, you know, Hyper Voice does some good damage. Both Pokemon are paralyzed now, but Nigel still, you know, I believe has lost both his Thundurus and his Weavile, so Arash actually can get Weather Control here with Groudon in the back, which is pretty darn solid. He brings in Kyogre. You can see that now the stream is operating as it should. But yeah, that full paralysis onto the Salamence, or onto the Kangaskhan definitely sets him back. I think Arash made the best play possible of not switching out into Groudon. You don't want Groudon to come in because you want to win the Weather War, and that's actually exactly what Arash has done. And now he can get Groudon in, and you know Groudon's faster than Kyogre. However, with both of your Pokemon paralyzed now and both intimidated, Sucker Punches won't knock out. So all Nigel can do, or has to do here, you know, you can just Hyper Voice and Ice Beam, I think. Especially because, you know, Kangaskhan can't return and Low Kick won't do too much against Intimidate. So, honestly, Arash not having Double Edge and having you know, low attack return really sucks for him because it shuts down his options, and I think really limits his chance of winning. He hasn't been too fortunate with the full paralysis either. So Groudon's going to come in here finally because Arash knows, hey, now I can finally win the Weather War. I actually reset the Intimidate onto Yveltal, which I think is a really smart play because now once Yveltal comes back in, its Sucker Punches are going to do so much damage with that Life Orb. So Groudon comes in, it's going to prevent Nigel from going for any water type attacks. I think if Nigel's best play here is the Ice Beam because you don't want to waste the turn, especially when you're ahead right now and you know that Kangaskhan can't do very much. Kangaskhan does get the Sucker Punch off, but it's not going to have Dark Aura boost anymore. Targets on the Mence there, does some okay damage. Might actually put it in Sucker Punch KO range from the Yveltal since he gets that critical hit on the second hit. We do see the Double Edge come out from the Mence, going to target down that Kangaskhan for a knockout. Gets a crit in retaliation as well. Not sure if I really like the Double Edge play there because you know that return won't do very much, especially since he's intimidated. So Nigel does go for the Ice Beam play, which is obviously a really good play. But I actually would have liked to see a Hyper Voice Ice Beam there because if you Hyper Voice there, you know, like, I guess maybe he was fearing double Sucker Punch, or maybe he just wanted to knock out onto Kangaskhan, but knowing like Kangaskhan's return is reduced, I don't think that's the best play possible. I think if you just Hyper Voice there, then you actually don't knock out Kangaskhan, which works out in your favor. Like, having Kangaskhan in isn't bad at all. It's just kind of useless because at most you can Sucker Punch. Once again, Return and Low Kick don't do very much, especially after Intimidate. So I think Nigel there could have made a slightly better play by Hyper Voicing instead of Double Edging, but that's just my opinion. Here Arash obviously has to bring the Yveltal, and now there are actually some mind games, right? Like, you Sucker Punch Salamence and just Precipice Blades, because if that's the case, and you get the single target non-Intimidate Precipice Blades off, Kyogre's forced to Ice Beam here, so Arash could actually win the game with a Sucker Punch onto Mence and a Precipice Blades. So if you're an Nigel, I think your best play is to protect your Mence and Ice Beam the Yveltal, and try to pick up a knockout there, hoping that you do, because you know that the Foul Play and the Precipice Blades combination won't knock it out. You see Arash clearly not happy there, as Salamence doesn't protect, so Nigel opting not to protect the Mence. I'm sure Arash was going for the Sucker Punch onto the Mence, so that was I have really questionable play there on Nigel's, and I don't know if I agree with the Double Edge. He didn't need to rely on that full paralysis, because you know that you can't knock out the Kyogre. We saw how little damage the Precipice Blade did game 1 first time around. And, you know, this game could have actually played out completely differently. I think Arash actually just would have won the game if he connected with Precipice Blades, because Sucker Punch knocks out the Salamence, presumably, you know, it's targeting Salamence, and then Precipice Blades just knocks out Kyogre in 2 hits since it becomes single target. You see there that without the damage reduction from the spread damage, that Groudon definitely would have been able to knock out Kyogre. So if you're Arash, visibly frustrated, can't really blame him because full paralysis has just not gone in his favor, and he actually managed that game really well. While it looked like Nigel was ahead for the majority of the game, especially in the beginning, what Arash was cleverly able to do was get his Groudon into a position and make sure that Kyogre couldn't use its water type attacks. If Kyogre is forced to Ice Beam in this matchup, then its chances of winning are significantly reduced, and that's exactly what Arash was able to do. So he played that endgame really well, and I think part of the misplay was Nigel going for that double edge instead of the Hyper Voice. I think if you Hyper Voice there, you actually don't want to knock out the you don't want to knock out the Kangaskhan because it means then the next one you can just Hyper Voice Ice Beam. So that play allowed Arash to get back into this one, and it's kind of a small play that, it's hard to think about during the time, but Arash played that really excellently given how poor the matchup was and given that Kangaskhan didn't have max attack, but unfortunately that full paralysis in the end prevented a game 3. So I would say that was a really well managed set by both players. Arash obviously showing adjustments in terms of play, but losing Thundurus early on both games for him really sealed the deal, and then the full paralysis. I know Arash was not very happy. He was saying on Twitter, like, yeah, even though not having return on Kangaskhan sucked, it was the full paralysis that really sealed the deal, which I would agree with. But, not having max happiness just limited Kangaskhan's options in terms of attacking. So, Nigel does end up taking the first set 2-0, and that's a really impressive way to start off a national tournament, especially by beating a former world champion. So, it was a really fun match to analyze. It ended up being an 0-2, but it really should have been a 3-game series, especially with that third game. So props to both opponents for giving a great show, especially with the same 4 Pokemon both times, but pretty differently in terms of how they played out. But yeah, that's going to be it for this first round matchup between Arash Ommati and Nigel Glover. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. I'm planning on doing one for all the stream matches of UK Nationals. So once again, if this is something you enjoy, please show your support by leaving a like in the video, and I would definitely appreciate your feedback and comments as well. Anyway, that's going to be it for this one. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time. Alright, peace.